There once were two partners, quite slick, with pockets both shallow and thick. They twinned in their ways, got lost in a maze, and their business went down real quick.
Hey, when couples venture into business together, it's much like deepening their marriage. Personal lives will definitely become intertwined with business matters. And in this video, we promise to share 10 ways on how you can, absolutely ruin your business and possibly your relationship. Welcome to Embers Rising. So I really want you to understand that this is going to be an incredible session diving deep on how you can break free of being in a challenging partnership with your other half. The reason for this angle is because sometimes understanding the pitfalls is the best way to ensure success. Instead of asking, how do I build the perfect business with my other half and business partner? Let's explore what could make your decisions and business relationship an utterly disastrous event.
Yeah, so if you really want things to suck, then this is the episode for you. So pull up some note paper because we've done the hard work for you. We actually went out and we found a couple who had a disastrous business and a disastrous relationship. And we actually hired them and we followed them around for a few days and we found out how they lived their lives, what they did to make their lives such a disaster. And so we're going to share with you those things. And if you're sort of getting the gist of what we're doing here, you'll know, don't do these things, right? So let's talk about the 10 things you can do to F it up big time. And let's go. What's the first thing here, Wendy J?
Oh, I love this. Number one is twinning too much. Partnering with your knowledge clone is what I like to call it. Do you want to dive deep into this, Dave? Because this is like the number one.
This is where disaster starts and dreams are born, right? And you don't really know the difference because a lot of times couples get together that go into business and they get, this idea that because they are doing the exact same thing, they know the same thing, right? Like they have the same skill set, automatically they're going to have a killer business. And what people don't realize is that business is a lot of things. It's not just the one thing. And so, having the same knowledge base as your partner is probably not always the best way to approach a business.
And when I think about twinning too much, I think about you are both doing the same thing. And so it's not really helping you move the needle. So if you're both doing bookkeeping, then who's doing the sales? If you're both doing sales, who's doing the bookkeeping? If you're both moving in a direction that's the exact same, or your knowledge is the exact same, so you can't move the needle and you haven't hired any outside help to help you get from A to B, then your destination is inevitably the wrong direction because you will not move up the levels that you need to go to actually grow.
And why is this, right? And if you haven't been, in a business together or started a business yourself, you've got to realize that the thing that you do, right, to make money is probably only a small percentage of the time that you're going to spend actually in the business, right? Because along with your skill set, what you do, you also have to do the books, and there's accounting, and there's sales, and there's marketing, and there is all of these things. You build a team, you're going to need human resources, right? Like all of these skills need to be developed, and most of the time you don't have them, inside of you when you come into it, and it just makes things so much better, right? If you and your partner come in from opposite ends, and at least you have, a really high proficiency in a skill set that's different than your partner. And that's just sort of been an observation of this couple that we looked at that was totally sucking at what they did.
I have to use this analogy of a story of, the way I think about this is walking into a grocery store and everyone in the grocery store that works there is just cashiers. Well, who's running the other departments? Customer service, the deli, the produce, the meat department, etc. Everyone's cashier. So it's like twinning too much. Same thing. If you and your other half and business partner are doing the exact same thing or similar, including how your mindset is and what you're learning, you're not actually going to get or make a move to the growth sector of a successful business. So it's really important just to be conscious of that, because you may be like great in your relationship, but when you come together as a business, like, hey, we actually only know the same thing. So one of you or both of you needs to actually step it up and get some personal development, get some coaching, move to the next level, grab some skill sets.
The whole twinning thing, it might feel safe, right? But in business, it's really that first step to stagnation. And it's just something that you really need to focus on. And hey, if you both have the skill set, at least, the same skill set, at least you recognize that now, and you can start to break out and develop some other skills. Remember, skills pay the bills. So you can never go wrong by learning how to do more and being better at everything you do in business.
All right, let's dive into number 2, time tug of war, which really means both of you are always too busy or too free to actually get projects complete.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have this misaligned time value. And what that does is it ensures that like both you and time discrepancy, and you spend a disproportionate amount of time as partners in the business, right? And remember, your partners in life, you come together partners in business, and it has to really be 50-50. But sometimes what we see is this, offset where someone does 90% of the work and the other person does 10% of it. And that can just really end up in, resentment and doing a lot of things that don't feel good, right? All of a sudden you feel like you're being taken advantage of, or you're taking advantage of someone. So yeah, Wendy, any thoughts on this?
I have a story about a boyfriend of mine back in the days that
a boyfriend story. This is awesome. All right.
I have a story that back in the day, we had a lawn and landscape company, and the too busy or too free, when you talk about time tug of war, this completely makes sense, because there was a few things that this message resonates with me. Like David said, I felt like I was doing majority of the work, and then he was doing most of the work but had a lot of free time. So there wasn't that 50-50. Also, you can have a space where both of you are saying, hey, we're doing business together, but you're planning so many other things in the different department. So your time is really not focused on the business, like you're focused on other life things. And so that's being like too free, or one of you's too free, or you're just too busy. And now you're just all in, and now there's like no relationship time. And that also kills your relationship. So when I think back to the lawn and landscape days of, I was actually landscaping and then doing the bookkeeping, and my boyfriend was mowing lawns with a crew. But then on the weekends, I was sitting there doing the billing, and he was out, playing sports, whatever he was doing. So I felt like there was some resentment starting to build in the relationship that I was frustrated. I thought, well, this will change. But then how do you talk to him about it? But then you're kind of so into it that you don't really say anything. And so you just keep going, and hopefully that it gets better. That relationship didn't last, by the way. But I can definitely say the time tug of war is a really big skill set for the both of you about scheduling your time to making sure that you're getting the things done. Both of you have this it doesn't have to be exact like 50-50, but that you're both feeling good that what you are working on, you're both accomplishing at the end of the day. It's a high five, because what you did to show up and get the thing done, or who you had to serve that day, is actually made a difference together. And so then you can feel good about your personal relationship.
Yeah, I'm so glad that relationship didn't work out for you, Wendy, and I'm sorry you had to go through that hard time, but it's a lesson that we've been able to carry into our relationship and our business together. The bottom line, though, here is the time tug of war is real, right? And you need to align your clocks as partners and watch your partnership either grow or unravel, right? And I guarantee you it's going to unravel if your time is out of alignment.
I think one of the hacks to this is communicating with each other about the responsibilities of what needs to get done. You obviously have a family to serve at the same time. Maybe you have children, maybe not. Maybe you have pets, maybe not. But what are the responsibilities to get the personal life handled, and then also the business matters handled? And if those aren't communicated, and it starts off good, and then it kind of gets loose, then, or life goes in transitions and you end up, one of the partners can become looser in their dedicated schedule than the other. So Dave and I have had that same thing. We've, go through the waves of life and we've had to kind of reset, like, hey, let's reset, regroup, let's get back on track. Let's get our structure down and make sure that we're both making, waves in the right direction. Number 3, empty pockets, same story. What does that mean? Both of you bringing the same financial distress into the business. You're both having not a good background in the finances area, and the story's coming in the same, and you may have bad spending habits. You may have whatever habits you're bringing in, or you're not talking about it, and that doesn't help the business actually grow.
That's for sure. And this comes down to really business partnerships and being misaligned with the money. And, this happens sometimes where people are like, I put the monetary resources into this and you do all the work and we're partners. And I can tell you, I've seen so many of those, those business relationships from both couples and non-couples, and they never seem to work out unless that was the entire agreement up front. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more, but someone that doesn't bring any additional financial resources or value to the table in a business, you're bound to have, not only just problems, but it's going to be hard to launch.
And I want to share a story. We had a friend and a coach who shared a story with us this year who talked about having this incredible agency doing a lot of marketing work. And yes, his prices were great and they were good, but he didn't take it to the next level. His wife and business partner saw availability of how that they could create more wealth. He had a great business. It was fantastic. It was going well, but they weren't in the profit range. And she came in and saw a different viewpoint and kind of helped restructure where their finances needed to be. And he himself, as a creator, just couldn't bring himself to doing that at that financial level where she was able to do that. So, if you're a creator and you feel like bad about charging, have that conversation maybe with your other half. Where do we need to be, or vice versa, to not have empty pockets while you're moving through the space of business.
Yeah. Last thing I'd like to just say about that is you're going to go through some empty pocket times if you want to scale a business, because once you get to a certain level, then you want to hire some people, some platforms, some tools. And so you keep reinvesting some of that money into the business to get it to grow, right? That spark to grow. So you both have to be in on that part of the, empty pockets scenario and be good with that. So, in closing, like empty pockets with the same story, right? Or the same skill set, it's really not a partnership. It just becomes this echo chamber.
So Dave and I, when we started marketing together, we had these 2 different agencies, and I was kind of on the front end with my agency, and we were in travel marketing. I was all like, social media, user experience, and Dave was like back end search engine. And the thing is that we had found growing together is we ended up very similar, having empty pockets. We had never raised our prices, and it was like years and years going on, and the cost was going up because we were growing a team. We were adding more tools to manage. We were sending out more reports. We were coaching more, and we hadn't considered our time valuable enough with what our clients were paying. So we've been through this same scenario together. Dave, you remember how much that we were serving, but then we were growing and serving more and more and more, but we never really added the cost on. And, it became an empty pocket, same story, until we were like, hey, we need to actually look at where we're at and what we're adding, the value that we're bringing. At the same time, our skill sets were continue building. We were constantly learning and staying up to date on like what's happening, what tools we need, what skill sets do we need to bring more value to our clients and in all these different online marketing areas. So it is something that the best way to overcome not having the same story and empty pockets is communicate and skill up where you need to, and then reevaluate your prices for who you're serving.
And I'll tack on to that story. I remember sweating out the shirt, as we laid out to this one client why their prices were doubling, right? And they were on the other end. They were listening very intently, and we went point by point over what was going on, what we were doing, and the value they're getting. And at the end, all they said was, "Yeah, it sounds good. We'll expect to see it on the next invoice." And you realize, right, like people see the value that you're providing if you are providing it. So don't sweat that conversation. Well, maybe a little bit, because you'll put more effort into it.
All right. Number 4. I love this one. Guessing games. Playing charades with business expectations. Boy, has this shot us in the foot so many times.
And this isn't even just a business thing. It's really a core relationship thing, right? And that is having unclear expectations of what the other person should be doing, knowing, feeling what's going on inside of you. You just have the conversation inside your head, and then you expect that the other person heard what you were thinking, and everything is going to go forward. And then there's friction and all kinds of frustration around this.
Great story. We had a huge project come in, and we were working with the Oprah team. And I had the expectations with David that he was doing, I think it was filming a lot of the product that we were using to put back out in social media. And it was a guessing game because I wasn't sure when we were going to do it. I hadn't communicated. I really wasn't good with my skill set about talking about it. There were so many deadlines that we weren't discussing that I was seeing, and I would put a lot of pressure on him. But it came down to us learning to communicate better, to not have the guessing games.
And it was in the housewares sector. And I just remember that product kept showing up every day from the manufacturer with no explanation as to why you had just gotten like a giant box of copper frying pans. And they're cool and everything, but is this part of what we're doing? Do you just love us and want us to cook? And so I had my own problem, with the client not expressing what they wanted to do.
That's difficult because, we're talking about this. You've got to get clear with what your client or who you're serving needs and wants and expects from you. And at the same time, together, when you two are in the business together, what are the expectations? Who's fulfilling what? What's the responsibility? What's the role? Who's taking on? And can you wake up every day knowing that that person is actually going to get the thing done that you expect? Or you've communicated so well with your client, they completely understand what you're doing. We used to not have, Dave, do you remember back in the day where we used to not have regular quarterly meetings with our clients, and we would just go on, and the work would go on. And then we were like, we need to make sure that everybody is on the same page, and they have a high expectation of what we're doing. So then we started these quarterly calls, and then became coaching calls, and, driving them so they knew exactly what we were doing, but they also had an availability to ask questions. And of course we would communicate with them in between those times, but this is like getting everybody on a phone call to talk it through. That's so important. There's so many things that are like misread through emails, or text messaging, or however you're communicating, but getting people on a phone call is so valuable because now you can see, and you can see what they want, hear what they want, but then they also you have the option to also maybe upsell them to something else because, maybe your skill sets are growing. Maybe you have something more to offer that they didn't know. All of those things can be a good positive thing. But when we don't communicate it, it's really frustrating, not only for the client and for you, but for each other as a partnership. That's really frustrating. And it can cause your entire relationship to break up. We just went through a scenario with a project that our entire friendship blew up and our business partnership blew up because expectations were out there on a guessing game board. Literally, we were going one direction thinking we're doing exactly what they wanted, and they were in another direction going this way.
All right. So basically the bottom line, is business is so much of a guessing game, right? I mean, it really is in a lot of things. And so you want to minimize that as much as possible because it's a guessing game, clarity. I mean, it's just a survival mechanism.
Number 5, handshake over paper. this is really talking about trusting your memory over the written agreements.
And so if you're going to rely solely on like handshakes and verbal promises and things, basically that stuff is going to get lost in the ether, because we all know that you only remember a small percentage accurately of what is actually said, what you've seen, what was done. But when it's in black and white, when it's in writing, you can actually go back and look at it and say, yeah, this is the direction we agreed we were going in, or what we were going to invest in, or how we were going to spend our time, or what we were going to buy, or whatever it is. So having it written.
Yeah, I love to say you've got to document your journey, and where we have fallen short in this, and we have seen it many times, is going in on a big project and again not having that clarity. The promises were made and they were not written down, or then we learned from that and then we would write them down, but they weren't signed. And I just think signing something is like paying that $5 a month to the thing that you have made a commitment to. You're like invested in it because you like physically intentionally put some energy into actually signing something. And I love this hack of whether it's a document that you created together and you're printing out and you're both signing it, or it's a visual mind map plan, print it out and both sign it. It just holds so much direction and promise for the two of you, knowing that you have a plan together that you are all in on, instead of saying, hey, we're going to start this amazing like boutique wine shop and we're going all in and here's what we're going to do today. But you basically have no plan together and it's not written down. Of course, you're going to modify it because things are going to change and you're going to grow and change and you're going to learn from your experiences you're going through it. Or you're a creator and you have this plan to do this podcast or this business or this service at this level, but you really don't have a plan down. So writing this down, both of you getting on the same page and then signing together like, hey, you know what? Print it and actually post it up in your office, saying, hey, we do have a direction, so that when things get tough, you can say, hey, let's go back to the plan. Where do we need now to adjust?
And it brings clarity around the last thing we talked about, expectations. Right? If it's written down, then the expectation is clear as to what was supposed to happen. So yeah, you can kill two birds with one stone on that one. Bottom line here is, a handshake might feel genuine, but without paper, it's just thin air. So you must document your journey.
Number 6, got to dive into this equity imbalance. The 90-10 workload with a 50-50 split. We kind of touched on it earlier, but this is the formula for absolute disaster. This recipe for one of you doing or feeling they're doing less than or more of the workload, it feels terrible. And this definitely will ruin the business and your relationship. So, when I start thinking about the imbalances, Dave and I have had that too, where one of us is feeling more of the workload and you can know the stress is building. The stress is building. You can feel the stress building between each other. Again, it comes down to communicating and getting clear about what we just talked about, the game plan. What's your plan? Who's doing what's the roles, and how are we getting these things done with the team or just with each other?
We're talking about couples working together, and that equity imbalance is very common when you might partner up with an outside business person where, like we discussed before, they're pouring the resources in financially, they're expecting you to do the work, and it's a 50-50 split, or a lot of times it's not even that much, right? They're taking 70 or 80 and you're only getting 20, but it's more than you'd make at a job, a lot more, right? So Alex Hormozi talks about this a lot, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about couples working together. And so if there is someone that's doing the bulk of the work and then expecting, half the rewards, and the other person does nothing, it just doesn't feel good.
So how do you overcome this? You sit down and talk about it. You look at the roadmap that you have created together. You look at ways that you can improve it, and it'll change. But the point is to get both of you to be closer to that 50-50 where you're both feeling good. Because at the end of the day, you're married to the business, you're married to each other. You come off that work day and you're saying, hey, I feel good about what I did. You don't do it every day, but you do want the majority of your time. By the time you hit the weekend and the playtime and hangout time, you're both feeling good about what you've accomplished or what the team's accomplished, because you have made an effort to be very clear about the roles and the work and the responsibilities that you're doing.
I had a business in the digital marketing space, and my wife at the time was supposed to be doing certain things for the business, and she just always used the excuse like, I don't like computers. But yet there's things that like billing and bookkeeping and accounting and those sorts of things that needed to be done. And it was this classic, right, where I was putting in 90, 95, and then when things wouldn't get done, 100% of the work, right, or 99.9% of the work, because I insist that the billing goes out on the first, right, not, hey, the first falls on a Friday, so we'll do it next Monday. The first is the first. And, I don't think the split was equitable either. It felt more like 75-25. So that was one of the things that really created a lot of friction in that relationship. And ultimately, there were a lot of things that made it just, unworkable for me. But yeah, that's the story.
That's funny because it's so relatable considering what I was going through with my lawn and landscape company at the time. I was out there hustling during the transition season, meaning fall and spring, when we're not quite mowing yet. We're wrapping up the season. So we're thinking about contracts for next year. Spring season is so early. We have not started the contracts. I was out there hustling for the contracts from commercial accounts. I was hustling to create relationships all year long with our current clients, making sure everybody was happy. I was on top of the customer service. I was definitely doing the billing. And then on top of that, I was actually doing the labor work. I was out there doing the design work and then actually actual landscape work, making sure the yard looked beautiful. They were happy with it. They were happy with the designs, planting. But at the end of the day, I would get home and my boyfriend would come home and I would feel that resentment too, because I know that he just went out and mowed lawns and that was it. Now he's playing or doing whatever he's doing in his personal life. And we weren't connecting. And this was it was tearing on our relationship. It was already like, oh, this is breaking. And I couldn't have real conversations with him. It was always like, hey, let's watch a movie. Let's do Netflix. It was just like zone out, but like sitting together. So it's like you're sitting together, you're supposed to be in a relationship, but not really working out.
All right, let's move on from exes to destination unknown, right? And this is pretty cool. It's really that misaligned mission. And we see this so frequently when it comes to people in business together, let alone couples in business together. And it's a lot of those things, but you're both captains of the business, right? But you have two different compasses pointed in different directions.
Destination unknown. So when you got married, you have a groove together. And now you're thinking, okay, you've got a destination together. You're going to take on life. You said your vows and you've made a commitment. Now, when you're going into the business, it's the same thing. You jump on those sailboats. You are the captains of the roles and responsibilities that you choose. But if you have two different compasses on those sailboats, you're going two different ways. And that can be so damaging because you don't grow, you're not discussing, the resentment starts, and now you're in conflict all the time. So I love this destination unknown concept of ruining businesses, of when you are two captains, make sure you're sailing to the same island, head to the destination together, know the responsibilities, get the skill sets you both need to like take it to the next level, whatever. And also support each other on the gifts that each other has. I think that's so important. And so, I don't know, not talked about very often. I think appreciating your partner for what they can bring to the table, but maybe they need to skill up in XYZ, do it. But make sure that you're sailing to the same island together. Right now, David and I are on a mission to create an incredible podcast and build this incredible mission of serving you with everything we know on creating couples working together successfully, purposely, passionately, in any way that can just supercharge your marriage and lifestyle. So, but we have a mission and we are on those sailboats with the same compass going in the same direction. We may have different skill sets doing it, but we're in the same direction. So our destination's not unknown. We know our destination.
The thing is, I love divergent ideas, right? And so many times we come at things with different ideas, but ultimately you need to, come together. Those ideas need to converge into one solid direction that you write down. This is our agreement. This is our expectations, right? This is where we're headed.
Absolutely. And I cannot help but think about the band that this key point matches with. Do you remember A Flock of Seagulls, David? The song released in 1982, I Ran So Far Away.
Unfortunately, I do remember that song, The Flock of Seagulls Hair. I love that stuff. I'm also aware that I was actually out dancing to that music, but you were still a little too young.
I ran so far away. Yeah.
No, please don't say it. All
right. Number 8, how to ruin your business even further is how to have a moral maze. And when I say moral maze, is navigating through your ethical labyrinths. And when I think of the ethical labyrinths, I think about that board game ball that you had to move and tilt the board to get just right to go through the maze. That's exactly what I mean in your business partnership. Is if it's same thing with your marriage, right? But with a business partnership, you've got to be on the same page and navigate together, or that maze of that ball is always going to be going down the little hole, really irritating. You're never getting anywhere.
We're talking at our core misaligned values, right? And as humans, if we're, so diametrically opposed in terms of what our values are, you don't have to match up on everything, but you have to match up on a lot of things. And especially in business, it's going to be important to have, similar values and at least discuss them and, come to that middle ground.
Yeah, for sure. Because otherwise you are going in a direction with the values that you feel are this way, but your other half, your business partner, is going in this direction. So the moral mazes is important. And thank you, David, for bringing in the reminder of values and how to achieve the business goals with each other. Again, is talking about it and then making sure you're on the same pace so you can be navigating correctly.
And at the end of the day, values are a little bit of a made up story that are in your head, but it's the thing, like the rules that you live by. And if you're living by a set of rules that you don't understand yourself, you're never going to be able to communicate them to your partner. And so destination unknown, there we go, right?
I think something that we haven't touched on too is honesty. And I think when I think of morals, I think of honesty and communication and the values and the trust and discussing openly with each other the successes that you want to have and the challenges that you're currently experiencing and the conflict that you may be going through or just had or maybe feeling is upcoming. So moral mazes can be very emotional, sensitive, touchy, but it's important to burst through and continue having the conversation.
Let's dive into lifestyle clashes. And that is number 9 of our couple that we followed around that had a disastrous relationship and business. And those people, right? We had one that was a saver and one that was a spender. And they basically had 2 completely different lifestyles.
I love lifestyle clashes. So great story. I love the saver versus the spender concept because this reminds me of the spender who is of the 2 of you. Let's just build the story because I can so see this happening and I've been guilty of it at the same time. You're frustrated in the business. Things are getting at a heightened level. The stress is building and you take your phone into the bathroom. And now the 3 things that have been on your Amazon cart or your shopping app cart is now you're hitting the buy now button. And then you just hope, even though you haven't told your partner about it, your husband, your wife about it, that when it shows up that it's actually okay, even though it was a little bit more than you planned on spending, but it's actually okay. And they're going to like be okay with it, but maybe they won't even say anything. That's like the spender. That's like the and that's like a super small. You can also do like a brainwash of the other person when he's like, hey, we're making great money right now. It's time to go on a vacation. Let's pull the trigger, hey, we've been in business for a couple of years. Let's do this big 50,000, 60,000, whatever dollar amount. It's like big amount. Let's go all out. Let's take this vacation when the both of you know that putting money back in the business right now would be better for the two of you than actually taking the extravagant thing or purchasing the extravagant thing. I actually know of a friend who got so successful on YouTube that she purchased a house, a car, and she was just rolling. It was just like boom. And then dead crickets. Like her platform kind of just went flat and people weren't coming to buy her thing anymore. It just went flat. And she was like, oh my gosh, I've made the mistake that I tell everyone not to do. I actually did it on myself. I got so excited about the money I'm making, the revenue coming in. I purchased, like that was the spender and not having the conversation. The other side of that is the saver who wants to save and make investments, but you're not having the conversation. So you have to know where each other is at, and you're both going to be probably the same. You're both probably a saver, and then both of you are a spender at times in life, or the seasons change.
But when it comes to business lifestyle clashes, they're like oil and water, and you had better quickly find some common ground in that lifestyle in your business, or you're going to watch the divide grow very, very quickly. It just reminds me, Wendy, I'm going to go back. Now we've opened the can of worms with my old relationship, my marriage, and the other person, not only were they not investing in the business, but they had a horrible habit. And I almost wish it was a drug habit, but it wasn't. It was this habit called quilting. And I just sort of ignored the whole thing, didn't watch the finances, didn't watch what was being spent. And one day I started, backtracking some expenses, and I realized that sewing machines are expensive, and piles and mounds of fabric are really expensive. And I had just, I had no one to blame but myself. And that was that I hadn't kept my eye on the ball, hadn't, communicated it. It's funny. So many people go into a business and they treat it like a job, right? And so they feel entitled to be able to just spend because they see all the money coming in, in their imagination, they're adding it up. But if they're not connected to the books, they don't actually see the true financial picture. And that's one of the things that, Wendy and I are really, really good about. We sit down once a week. We look at the books, we look at the bank account, we look at the receivables, we look at where we're headed, and we make informed decisions about expenses. And we're a little bit risk takers. So we choose sometimes together to make an expenditure or spend on something that probably other people might not have, but at least the choice is made together. And so, win or lose, we're both have skin in the game. And, I know people look in our garage and they say, what's all with all the bicycles, right? But that's one of our lifestyle choices. So it's not a clash that we each have too many bikes.
True. And I know we are talking about finances, the saver versus spender in the lifestyle, but there are other things to be thinking about when I think of this for your work-life balance. And what is your financial planning? When is your financial planning conversation? How are you managing the stress that is coming up that you need to continue managing? What is your conflict resolution? Where is your goal setting? These are all lifestyle clashes. If you don't have the skill set to have these, then what? It's not only like taking a toll on your personal relationship, but now also in business, especially if you don't even have network or support you as you're moving through your love together and as your business together. So number 10, baggage claim. Personal drama becomes business drama. What the heck does that mean, David?
Yeah. So, baggage claim, I think, probably is going to ruin your relationship as well as your business. And that's just having an unreliable partner, right? Like someone that has this messy personal life, they have messy habits, and all of this extracurricular junk, right? This stuff, all those issues eventually get drug into the business and bog the business down.
Like big time being unreliable to the other partner. Gosh, let's share our love story of foundation of working together for 4 years, because this is like a baggage claim ticket here. If you don't know, David and I actually built the foundation of our relationship in a working relationship over the phone. We shared clients. We had 2 separate marketing agencies, but our specialties were a little bit different. So we actually started the foundation of our relationship for 4 years working together before we actually even met. So we were building this trust, reliability, honesty, communication. There was a huge skill set that was happening before we actually even met, David. Do you remember?
Yeah, for sure. So, Wendy actually, through a referral, called me up to work for one of her clients. And I guess I probably am pretty good at interviews because, well, look where we are today. But that really started, we were in different parts of the world geographically, and it was pretty much all business for the first 3+ years. We ended up, working together almost every day with multiple clients from both sides that we contributed in. And, I think that was a really good way for us to learn each other's values and work ethic and expectations, right? Because these expectations would be poured down to us from the client, not just internally. And we had to deliver and, meet deadlines. So you learn a lot about a person.
You do. And I think, building foundation together as a couple and then going into business together can be really successful as long as you both want to do it and you both are going to know you're going to work on the communication skills, the foundation of everything you need to actually make it successful. Otherwise, you literally will be going to the ticket counter and reporting that you have a lost bag or a lost now partner divorce, right? So it is important. And when I think about unreliability in a relationship, it's really important to help you because as a couple, not everything's perfect. It's not like, hey, Dave and I met, we had this great foundation we built and then we met in person and the rest is history, It's not like that for you. I know majority of you are coming together. Life is messy. Personal life is messy, but you both want to go all in on this incredible business concept idea together, or you're in it right now listening to it. And I'm like, oh, I'm stuck right now. But you know what? If you stick through it and say, I know I can build the skill sets that I need to get past where I need to go, you can both feel so much happier, create the passion and lifestyle that you've always dreamed of, and don't have to go report a baggage claim ticket.
For sure. And what I don't want people to take away from this is the perception that making mistakes in your life, in your relationship, and especially in business makes you unreliable. And you don't want to come down on your partner when, something gets executed on incorrectly and doesn't go well, because that's part of life. And you can actually take someone that has good intentions, but makes a mistake and jump on them, and they will become the unreliable partner because they won't want to make the mistake the next time. So it's important to make sure that we're talking about unreliability as being someone who doesn't show up and someone that may be erratic in their behavior.
When I think of baggage claim, I also think of like you are 2 people boarding the same flight, going in the same direction. And yes, you will have touchdowns. You'll collect your bags. You'll get back on the plane and continue going down your journey. This concept of personal drama and versus business drama serves to me, thinking about this, the reminder of it's an interconnectedness between the 2 of you in your personal relationship and your business relationship. So it can absolutely ruin you if you're not on the same page with personal life messy, business life messy, and you're not getting things cleaned up and you're having communication breakdowns and resentments happening and there's just storms after storms after storms of conflict. But everything can be worked out unless it's at a point where you two are just not made to be in business together. And sometimes you have to accept that because you know each other's strength, you tried it, and it just doesn't work, and you're both just not happy doing it. And that's okay. But if you are and you want to work through it, now is the time to say, I do not want to go check my, go to the ticket agent and get a baggage claim ticket, Well, let's wrap this. Our mission here is to fuel the embers of your life between love and business. We want to help you work towards creating a magical love and business life together rather than a challenging one. So stay awesome. Thank you for joining us here at the Embers Rising Podcast, sending you all the warmth and love. If you found today's episode valuable, please hit the subscribe and ring the notification bell and leave us a review. That would super be amazing. We don't have a set schedule on our releases, so to ensure that you catch our next spark of inspiration, stay notified. For more tools and insights to keep your life's embers glowing brightly, follow us on social media. Together, let's fan the flames of passion, purpose, and partnership. Until next time, keep those embers rising.
Aloha.